Good morning, everybody. What I want to talk about with you today is failure. Namely, what do the greatest public policy failures of the 21st century have in common? What they have in common is they were all driven by the failure of experts. In 2003, it was the intelligence experts that convinced President Bush to invade Iraq because, of course, they had weapons of mass destruction that they were going to use against the United States and its allies. In 2008, it was the policies of Alan Greenspan, the greatest macro expert of all time, who was convinced that the housing bubble was not a big deal and banks would be able to withstand its bursting. And we all know about 2020 and the shutdown of society that occurred all over the world, but especially the irreversible harm that occurred with children whose schools were closed in the United States. I'm writing a book about expert failure, and I have a particular perspective on this topic because of my life journey. I spent the first half of my career on Wall Street as a biotech investor, where as a biotech investor you have all your success disagreeing with what the medical experts think is the future of medicine. I've written a lot of policy papers and fought the experts on COVID, on healthcare policy, on Bitcoin, a bunch of other topics. I've advised presidential candidates like Marco Rubio and Mitt Romney. I was the Forbes opinion and policy editor for a decade. So I spent a lot of time thinking about the pattern of why experts fail. And what you see, if you actually look at all these expert failures over and over again, is there's a repeatable pattern. It starts with something that's actually true. The expert cites an actually true fact and then makes a sweeping prescription based on that fact. Coronaviruses are dangerous. Therefore, let's shut down all of society so that we can reduce transmission to zero. And then what the experts do is they get their friends together and say, if you disagree with this so-called expert consensus, we're going to kick you out of the advisory boards. We're going to shut you out of the media. The media is not going to quote you as an expert. And then all of a sudden, it looks like there's unanimity among the credentialocracy. And then the policymakers say, well, all the experts agree, so let's do what they tell us, and it doesn't work out. Not only is that true of massive policy failures, it's true of relatively smaller ones, like dietary experts saying you should eat 11 servings of carbs a day, of people saying everyone should go to college regardless of the price, saddling everyone with student debt, about pain experts saying, well, you've got to control pain. It doesn't matter if people get addicted to opioids. And so these are the ways in which experts have failed, but there are things we can learn about where experts have succeeded, especially where experts can succeed in the future. The first is you've got to legitimate dissent. There always has to be a role for dissenters in any so-called expert community, because that's how you test your ideas. You've got to have a diversity of AI models, especially going forward. If ChatGPT and Claude are dominating the way everyone gets their information, it's going to be even worse than when Google and Wikipedia dominated the way everybody got their information. And we have to have a decentralized policy architecture in which people can experiment with different sets of rules so that we can try different approaches to building new societies, building new innovative systems. And we have to have a meritocracy. The thing that makes expert failure compound over time is the experts screw something up, and then the policymakers say, well, we've got to fix the mess we've created, and they turn to the same experts to fix the mess that they created. It's hard to do this in existing legacy institutions. Elon Musk, when he took over Doge, said, it's easier to go to Mars than it is to reduce the federal budget. Right? I'd rather trust the people in this room to create new institutions that can succeed or innovate or iterate where existing legacy institutions have struggled. Now, that's not to say we shouldn't try to reform legacy institutions. That's why I founded a think tank called the Foundation for Research on Equal Opportunity to try to fix the challenges that we have in the United States. But it's a lot easier to start anew. So where can network states take advantage of the expert diaspora to create better systems and better economies? The first is we know about digital assets, right? Crypto will flow where it's treated best, and we've seen that even the U.S. is now responding to that and saying we've got to improve our own rules so that we can attract that capital back. We see it with energy, where the Western dogma is we have to use less energy because we have to save the planet. No, we can actually have abundant energy, but just do it in a lower carbon way. There are very easy ways to do this, and network states can implement those models. We can customize AI, not merely have different AI models, but AI models that are tailored to the unique needs and capabilities and idiosyncrasies of network states. And especially, we can reimagine healthcare. We've already talked about the FDA piece of it, but it goes far broader than the FDA. Why do we have to have MDs and nurses and lab technicians all with different credentials in an AI-powered world? There's going to be a much more fluid way to take advantage of our workforce to deliver healthcare and design healthcare. Why is certain healthcare delivered in a hospital versus a medical clinic versus your house versus walking around on the street? All of those things can be changed and will be changed by technology, but hospitals are a multi-trillion-dollar industry. They're almost as powerful, if not more, than a state. And so if you're trying to fight the hospitals in a legacy society, you'll fail. In a network state, the experts that leave those legacy societies can build new entities, new paradigms, and we can all benefit. Thank you very much. If you want to learn more, you can click on the QR code. And if you want to help me come up with new ideas on how to generate or how to identify expert failures, tweet them at me, and maybe we'll include them in the book. I look forward to sharing with you the manuscript next year. Appreciate it.